Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Campbell. I'm a doula in Washoe County, Nevada, a Medicaid provider, a lactation educator, childbirth educator, and mom of 18. You can find me and connect on doulainreno.com. Remember, give a shout out to those who are brave enough to share their stories with us on how they have become parents. Let's dive in. Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Campbell. Today I'm here with Duncan Bhaskaran Brown, and I pronounced your name. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. Look, I'm generally pretty good, but it is always nice when somebody really nails my name. That always makes me
Yeah,
happy.
I have a friend, his last name is Bhaskaroon, and it took me a while to get it. So when I saw yours, I'm like, it's got to be close. So there we go. I want you to jump in. We have books behind you. I'm really excited about this interview. I love interviewing men on their perspective about birth and birth work and birth stories and your journey. So, but super excited about yours specifically. We're going to talk about some pretty cool things. Start sharing your parenting journey with us.
So it's sort of interesting, like how far do you go back with that one? And I'm not going to go too far back. I'm going to start as late as legally possible, as it were. But to give you the context, when my wife and I decided that it was a great idea to start a family, I was drinking quite heavily at the time. Now, I know that somewhere in the back of my mind was this vague thought that actually probably drinking a lot and small children not that compatible. How are you going to do the late night thing if you're passed out on the sofa? You know, all of that kind of stuff was vaguely buzzing around in my head, but in a fairly vague way. So my wife and I started trying, which is of course the fun bit, isn't it? And
Favorite.
yeah. And then she got pregnant and we were instantly transformed into that, that totally naive couple, just like no idea what they've let themselves in for, just like happy, but oblivious. And it was all going really, really well until all of a sudden it wasn't. And she had a miscarriage and everything fell apart. And I'm sure I don't need to tell you or your listeners how hard that was on her. I mean, it took an incredible toll on her mentally, physically, and emotionally. And looking back, I know now that what made it worse was I just was not there for her. You know, my default reaction to difficult times, to tough emotions, to stress was always just to pour myself into a bottle of wine. And that is pretty much the worst thing that you could do at the time. So, unsurprisingly, things got kind of rough and they got quite bumpy. And, I never had one of those 4 a.m. moments where I was staring in the mirror, looking at myself, wondering what I was doing, all of that sort of stuff. But if I had, I would have been able to condense it into one nice question. Of course, I didn't have that, so I couldn't condense it into one nice question. I just spent a couple of months really kind of like wondering what the heck I was doing with my life. You know, what was the point of Duncan? What was I here for? You know, if it had have been like dramatic music in the background, I would have just looked into the mirror and said, Duncan, what do you want from life? Do you want another drink or do you want a family? I mean, that was essentially what I was asking, just in a far more roundabout way. And the good news is that I made the right decision and I stopped drinking. And almost to the day, 9 months after I stopped drinking, our daughter was born, which means all of that stuff they say about alcohol and fertility, probably true.
Tell me more about the alcohol use. Do you consider yourself an alcoholic? Was this an issue in relationships in the past, and specifically with your wife? Was there, because I think a lot of times we go into relationships in a certain way, then we don't realize how much needs to change when we have kids. And if it doesn't, that's not going to look real healthy. So tell me a little bit more, deep dive that a little bit more.
Yeah, so I wouldn't call myself an alcoholic. I wouldn't have called myself an alcoholic. When I was drinking, I wouldn't have called myself an alcoholic out of flat out denial. That would have been the reason. Now I wouldn't call myself an alcoholic because I don't particularly like the phrase alcoholic. I
Right.
was dependent on alcohol. I very much believed that I could not make my life work without it. So
Mm,
psychologically and to an extent physically dependent on alcohol. That's what I would talk. That's what I would say. But then when I was doing it properly, I would have met all of the criteria for any doctor to kind of
mm,
look quite worried and say you should stop drinking now.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean it was a big problem, and I think you're you're really right about that. When my wife and I met, there were things that we both needed to work on, and I guess we're kind of lucky in some respects that it sort of transpired to all kind of come together. And look, we're not perfect now, are we? My daughter's 8.5, going on 18 and a half. And you know, we're still
Yes.
work in progress, aren't we? But it did come together so that when she was actually born, she was born into a pretty stable, loving relationship. And I think she has always had pretty good, stable parenting. She's been quite
Mm,
lucky, uh, particularly when you consider where we were a couple of years before she was born.
which is amazing. I mean, and fantastic. So she's 8 now. Um, what what was giving it up like? Was it super hard for you? Was it not? Did you just figure this is what has to happen? I love the fact that she was born like 9 months later. How was your relationship through all of this?
So my wife sort of met me, and kind of she met me the way I was. And the thing is, I wasn't like lying on the in the gutter, kind of
Yeah.
out and out bum or anything like that. I was relatively successful. So you look at that and you look at the kind of the compromise, don't you? Which is ultimately what any relationship is. You sort
Yeah.
of like look at it and go, well, he's doing pretty well in this sense. There's this other stuff that we may pay too much attention to for the moment. We'll ignore those little bits.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, it absolutely coloured our relationship because I think now I can see many of the kind of discussions and arguments that we had. I it was because I wasn't emotionally available to her. I wasn't able to see what she
Right.
actually needed. And I think, this is a problem that I think more men than simply me have it. And it's not
Yeah.
necessarily related to drinking, but certainly the drinking didn't help me with it. You know, often she'll say that she needs help with something. And what we hear as men is we hear, right, go and get your toolbox and put up some shelves for me, please. And it's like, well, that's not what she's actually asking for. That's not what she wants. She probably wants to define the problem first, and then decide whether maybe we should just get rid of some books or whether we should actually build some bookshelves. And actually, even all of that is probably overthinking it. When she says she wants
Yeah.
some help, she probably just means she wants a hug.
Yeah.
So stopping drinking for me has been a journey into emotional intelligence and learning stuff like that. And as I will say frequently, our relationship is not perfect. We are not the finished article, but gee, it is a lot better than it used to be.
Yeah, I imagine because really you don't have the ability to be there in the way that probably was needed. But you recognize that and made a shift, which I think is where a lot of not just men, but a lot of people in general don't. They don't even see that they're emotionally unavailable and they don't see that there's an issue they want to change. And then there's always like, I was like this and you loved me when we started. So is it fair to ask me to deviate from what you already knew, loved, and accepted? Before I would love, I know you have I want to talk about what you do in your books. You have books, all the show notes are there, but you have books, you have freebies, you do coaching, you do speaking. So I know that you've transformed this experience into a way to help other people. So correct me if I'm wrong and dive in on that because I really think, recognizing it is the first step and then wanting to do something about it is another step completely. So
Yeah, it's something that I come across a lot with people in the sober space. For many of us, the kind of like it's a bit odd to be on a podcast about parenting and saying the most significant thing that's ever happened to me is me stopping drinking because
It's great.
like yeah, but I mean, genuinely, leaving aside marriage and the birth of Leela, definitely the most significant thing that has happened to me is stopping drinking, and it had such a profound effect. You know, going from being tired and angry and miserable. All of the time to being energetic and being able to concentrate and peace and joy and just all of the good stuff. It's such a huge difference it's made to my life. Like, obviously I want to share that, and a
Yeah.
lot of people do get like that. And I guess, that's been a journey in and of itself. I've always been a writer, so it naturally, I wanted to express some of the thoughts and feelings that were going on around that journey. So they naturally kind of turn themselves into books. I've also always done a lot of speaking, and writing and speaking do tend to go hand
Yeah.
in hand. The coaching and the working with people one to one, it's something that I really, really enjoy, and it's something that I want to continue doing because it's sharing those positive feelings. But I mean, just selfishly, when you see somebody change like that, when you see it all kind of click for them, when you see that big change in their attitude, that is just like that's amazing. I'd do it for free, but please don't tell my clients because I need the money.
No, absolutely
Um,
not. We'll cut that out.
thank you. Yeah, yeah. Cut that bit out. Cut that bit out.
I
But no,
think
no, but it is
oh,
really rewarding and it is
yeah.
really enjoyable. And I want to keep doing that, but I also want to campaign. I want to get onto podcasts like this, and I want to kind of get people to think more about alcohol and whether they're actually enjoying it or whether they're just doing it because everybody does it.
Were you surprised when you quit how much better you felt? And because on your website, I mean, we've touched on that a little bit, right? And then on your website, you're helping people increase productivity, discover time, so time management, improving performance, increasing energy, improving concentration, boosting creativity. So like if alcohol was reducing those so significantly that when you stop you see this massive difference, and that's just a short list, is that a good way? Were you surprised by that? First of all, when you stopped, what was that journey like for you? And then I would think that that would be a good approach, not like me, the wife, saying, hey, I need you to stop this if you want to have a family, or this isn't a healthy environment, but saying, if you reduced your alcohol consumption, you would have all of these benefits. What's the best way to tackle this, I guess, after you tell us how much of a surprise it was for you?
Yeah, no, it was a huge surprise, and I think you're dead right. I mean, that is the way to sell something to somebody, to tell them what the positive benefits are. Don't hammer on the negatives. That never works. It never. You tell somebody it's killing them, you just make them afraid. And what do people who drink do when they're afraid? They
Drink.
just drink more, don't they? Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't work. So absolutely, telling people the positives uh, is is huge. Now, the thing is, though, you kind of only realize it after the fact because most people don't think that they're tired all the time and that their focus is rubbish and that they're not half as creative as they could be. Most people think they're doing all right because they just think of life as it is at the moment as the baseline.
Right.
And I think Alan Carr expressed that really, really well. He talks about the lethargy and ill health that people come to mistake for their life. And,
Yes.
that's the thing. We're quite bad at spotting how bad it's got because it just creeps up on us. It doesn't happen overnight, it happens gradually over years and years and years. So we don't kind of notice it. So sometimes it is a bit difficult to help people see how much better they could be. The thing that I generally try and do is just like be enthusiastic at everybody and be generally quite energetic and happy and you just like be living proof. That's I guess the best way to do it.
I love that. But you're right. I mean, look, we could insert things here. Alcohol's one, right? The volume of weed that's smoked with adults that have families or in relationships, and the fact that it's used to help them sleep and with anxiety, but actually can create the opposite response, right? It's creating the lack of sleep and the anxiety, so you smoke it more. And that's become more common or more discussed because of its legality in the States. But there are other things too, like a lack of exercise, eating terrible food. Are you in the US?
No, no, no. I'm in the UK, but
Okay.
I keep on top of the NFL.
I mean, it's the important things in the US. Well, we've got one of the highest rates of obesity. Like it's the food that we have here that you guys would never allow in your country. Why? Why do we have it if nobody else allows this crap in? And it can be
Although
insert
to
thing
be
here.
fair,
Yes.
most of the stuff that we ban is down to the European Union regulations. So if we're now kind of trying to get much closer to you guys, who knows? We probably will be allowing all of this stuff in into the UK. I mean, just to give you one example, Juul, they're not technically a vape, but most people think of them as a
Oh,
vape.
yes.
They're
No,
yeah,
yes.
they're one of those. The capsules that are sold in America are way stronger than the capsules that are sold in the UK at the moment, because we still keep the laws from the European Union at the moment. So we don't have the full strength ones. Although, of course, you can just go and buy them online. It's not that hard. But
Yeah.
in general, if you go and buy them from a shop, they're the EU rated ones. Although, who knows? Maybe that's about to change. We'll see.
Well, yeah, lots of change is happening both on both sides of the world. Um, so using like these are the benefits you'll get from not drinking, because like I said, it could be insert thing here, um, that's making you feel like crap and not work to your potential. I would think talking about those benefits, like you said, would be the best thing. How was the second pregnancy? You stopped drinking and your wife got pregnant pretty much at the same time. You might not have known she was pregnant yet, but they happened almost simultaneously. What was that pregnancy like? And how did you work into being so much more emotionally available? Because that's sometimes hard
So
for men.
yeah, you know, no, it is. It absolutely is, and a lot of practice and a lot of time. And
Yeah.
I mean, that that the pregnancy, that was hard. So there is a lot of other things as well. So my wife has struggled with her mental health throughout her life. And, again, I'm sure you and your listeners are quite aware of the effects that pregnancy can have on a woman's mental health. So, it was quite difficult. It was quite a balancing act. So the consultant really wanted her to take medication when she was pregnant, but the medication that she was on was one of the older antipsychotics, and she was not sure about taking that.
Okay.
And it was, there's not a lot of research about that particular medication and pregnancy. So she stopped taking the medication. And we did talk about it. We did go through it. And I was kind of hoping she'd start taking it again after Leela was born. So there was a lot of stuff going on. It was kind of fraught, and I was
Yeah.
still, kind of finding my feet, finding a new way to deal with stress and anxiety and things like that, and finding my own place. I mean, in many respects, it probably would have been better if we'd have left it a little bit longer, but that's life, isn't it? So it wasn't a walk in the park, and I think a lot of the improvement that both myself and my wife have made, it has been over the years. It wasn't kind
Yes.
of like bang and it's all kind of good, but we just like it still is now. We work at it every day. Tend to take Sundays off, but
Yeah.
pretty much work.
But I want to make that point that like making the decision to stop for whatever reason, and then the actual stopping, which is way more challenging. So kudos to you for doing that. That is not an easy feat to stop drinking completely. And then trying to become more emotionally available. Like this is all a process. It's not a switch. You're not flipping a switch. It does take time. So it's very important to decide you want to stop, and it's really important to stop, and it's really important to go through your stuff. But this is definitely not a like a one and done, and oh, we've arrived at the destination. And I want to make that really clear. Relationships are hard without extra things happening in there. Um, Extra stuff can make it more difficult, and then making changes is really hard. So that's kind of what I wanted to address.
Yeah, I mean, I think in comparison, actually stopping drinking is probably the easy bit because look, there are lots of different ways to stop. I work in what would be called cognitive reframing or cognitive realignment, which is about getting to grips with your beliefs. So you change your beliefs about whatever behavior you want to change. And once you've done that, you do a little bit around thought management. And then the behavior kind of drops away naturally. And it tends to be quite easy if you do the work and then change the behavior. So doing it that way, what happens is you put in quite a bit of effort to kind of remove the behavior, and then you don't have to put in any effort to maintain the behavior. You know, I don't actively spend any energy not drinking. It's something I don't do. In the same way that I imagine you probably don't expend any energy every day not taking opioids.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
it's yeah, it's something that you put a lot of energy into at the start, and then it becomes very easy to move forward. Whereas, of course, relationships are the exact opposite. They're at their easiest at the start when you're kind of like caught up in the whole lovey-dovey thing, and
Yeah.
then it's like the work kicks in and the work continues, and you just have to keep putting that work in. So for as long as you like the relationship to last.
I mean, right? That's the magic wand. You're not gonna get somewhere and be like, oh, check that box. We're all good. It doesn't ever stop. It doesn't ever stop in any situation. So that's so important to point out. I'm guessing that it was the birth of your daughter, after the birth of your daughter, or somewhere in there, because you had had your journey for about 9 months then, that you funneled your passion for writing and speaking in a slightly different direction because of this dynamic and your coaching. So it's been 8 years. She was born at, she's 8, you said. So take me into how your career completely changed from this. And I totally want to pimp out your books and stuff.
Yeah, actually, just before I do that, there's one point that just
Yes.
you just think of, and it's something that I say all of the time about having kids. That like kids are really, really annoying, aren't they? Because
Yeah.
you think you've got it cracked. You think you've figured them out. You think you've got everything working the way it is, and then they change. And actually, learning that was such a valuable lesson because I realized it applied to quite a lot of stuff, and it definitely applies to my relationship with my wife. So she had one job, and she would only work in the morning. So she'd be free in the afternoon. So we'd often have a late lunch together before I go and pick Lila up from school. And we got into this really nice rhythm of doing that. And then, of course, she moved jobs, and then she wasn't working on a Thursday. So then it became Thursday, and then she moved jobs again. And it's like, we had to figure out another way of actually finding some time to spend some actual quality time together. So yeah, it's annoying. You think you've got relationships cracked, and then they changed. But yes, what did I do? Well, when I stopped drinking, I was doing a lot in local government.
Oh.
So that was really where I was channeling my main effort in terms of coaching and training and writing. And I was enjoying that. And, I think I was making a bit of a difference. I was helping some people out, but it was effectively kind of leadership coaching aimed at local government, local politicians. So yeah, it was interesting and everything, but after a while I realized all I was doing was I was helping people to achieve something that I had achieved myself in the past. And the most interesting thing that I've achieved, the most impact that I've ever done, of course, it was stopping drinking. So that was when I kind of pivoted. I retrained. So I was lucky enough to start working for the Easy Way Clinic, which is the world's most effective stop smoking service, probably the world's most successful addiction therapy service. So I was very lucky to be able to train with them. And then, I started doing the other qualifications and reading the books and stuff like that. And out of all of that, that's where my first book, Get Over Indulgence, came in. That's it's a story, really. I mean, you might learn something from it, but mostly it's just a kind of story, and it does center around the birth of our first child, Leela. um and it's got a lot about my relationship. It's also around not drinking, and also around removing junk food from my life as well. So that's,
Mhm.
like, I don't want to kind of put people off, because it really is just a nice little story with some jokes. uh and I enjoyed that, and I got a lot of really good reviews. It's changed the lives of some people, and that's great. So that's when I started writing Real Men Quit, which basically, blokes, we're not really that good at asking for help, are we? But we are quite good at drinking. So we drink more alcohol than women, but we ask for less help. So I wanted to do something that was easy for guys to just low impact. All you have to do is type "real men and quit" into Amazon, and they'll fly it over by drone, won't they? So it's nice and easy. And yeah, just to do something that was aimed at men, to meet them where they're at. So much of the stuff that's out there, I like it, and it resonates with me now, but I don't think it would have done when I was drinking,
Mm.
primarily because a lot of it was written by women. And it's good. I think it's great to have lots and lots of female voices in the sober community, but that doesn't necessarily help the guys that are stuck in the trap, and there are many more of them. So men are about 3 times more likely to have a problem with drinking than women, which is unsurprising, because about 75% of all the alcohol drunk worldwide is drunk by men rather than women. So um, yeah, it's got a lot of sports in it. It's got a lot of James Bond, Star Wars, Terminator, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's designed to meet men where they're at, and just help them to kind of think a bit about their drinking, maybe change their relationship with it a little bit.
I am so proud of you, first of all, and I'm proud of your journey stopping, because I know how hard that is. And I think I'm even more proud of the fact that you're so open and outspoken about it, giving the statistics, because I didn't want to say other men earlier, but when you just said, 3 times more likely, so I'm not completely off base. I don't want to point the finger, because this is not a male only issue, but it is dominated that way. And that's really fascinating. But I'm just wildly proud of you sharing this, and then reaching back and giving a helping hand to other men that are struggling with it also. I, I just love it. I appreciate you.
Oh, well, thank you. I very much appreciate that. That means a lot. Thank you.
Thanks so much for being on, Duncan, and for sharing your story. People can contact you. I hope they do. What a phenomenal story. Thank you.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. I talk about this stuff all day long. Actually, I do talk about this stuff all day long. I mean, I hope it comes across to your listeners how passionate I am about it. And if they want to get in touch, please do. The easiest way to find me is just put getover.uk into the internet. That'll take you to a bit of my website. And on my website, there's all the socials and all of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So yeah, get in touch, ask me a question. I really will try and help you. And if I can't help you, I'm pretty confident I know somebody who will.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate you. Thank you.